All right, you guys, we're gonna do a mini boot camp right here, right now. We're gonna do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 burpees, and then we're gonna stop with downward dog. Okay? I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna make that decision for you. But sometimes in life, a decision is made for you, and it changes your whole direction. A year and a half ago, my husband delivered 7 words that would change my life forever. That day, he asked me to come into the kitchen. I sat down and he said, "I don't want to be married anymore." Now, for a moment, I sat there in silence, but I thought, what? You don't want to be married to me? Are you having an emotional breakdown? Are you going through a midlife crisis? Like, you don't want to be married to me. Okay, in hindsight, I sat there dumbfounded with no words for somebody that really liked to talk a lot. But I had no words. I left the kitchen into the bedroom where I collapsed on the floor. It became that ugly cry. Some of you might recognize it. You almost want to take a picture of it because it's so ugly. Tears running down your face, snot running down your face. You can't breathe. Everything's going through you. There's emotions that I'd never felt before. I felt like a piece of me had just left. I was feeling grief like I'd never felt before. I'd actually never lost somebody in my life, but right then, right there, those emotions that I was feeling at that time it was like I was losing a life. Over 24 years I spent with this man, and over half my life at that time. I knew we didn't have an easy marriage, and relationships are hard, and they're work. But to start out our marriage, 17 out of our 24 years together, his parents weren't a part of our lives. They chose not to be a part of our lives, even so that they didn't come to our wedding. And so that was our first emotional breakdown. The second one would come when I would have my 2 amazing boys. Postpartum depression with both of them. And that was our second emotional breakdown, and one we really didn't know how to deal with. And we actually separated for 9 months when my youngest was 9 months old. And by the grace of God, we actually did get back together and spent another 14 years together. From that day forward, I knew my life was going to change forever. And I tried to fix my marriage. So we tried counseling. I went on my own. We did see a psychologist thinking by stepping it up, we might save this marriage. I tried begging him. I tried to understand why this? Why are you doing this to our family? Why are you doing this to our children? How are we going to do this financially? And what about me? And so, I might want a drum roll. Can you guys handle a drum roll right now? Because this is where you get a drum roll. There we go. You might be surprised that was my breakdown. But from breakdowns come breakthroughs. And 4 months later, I'd found out he'd moved on with another woman. And all those emotions that I felt in the beginning on that floor in the bedroom that day came rushing back. Except now, add a dash of crazy. Little speechless Lisa was not so speechless this day. And a phone call would ensue to him that day that became my dumping ground of 24 years of pent-up shutting my mouth, shutting up, saying nothing, not saying how I feel, losing connection of who I was. He was going to get it that day. And that's exactly what I did. I let him have it. It was like putting fuel in an empty gas tank. And it fueled me. And that anger I felt that day, actually, I used it for the good of me. It actually fueled me in such a way that it allowed me to rise up and move on. And so that's exactly what I did. I moved on. And how I moved on? Well, it was a bit of an experiment. But I got into me. Because what I'd realized after 24 years of taking care of everybody else, taking care of everybody's schedule, my children's schedule that I love very much. I keep saying that, but I do. And I still take care of them. They're young men now, but taking care of my family, taking care of my business, taking care of my clients, taking care of my sister, my friends, everybody else, showing up for everybody else except for me. And so it was time to rise up and take care of me. So I got into my body. I say I got into my body, mind, and spirit, but first I had to find out what that was. So I started doing new things. First with love, my healthy addiction was yoga. That was a place where I found, well, I had to get used to the sweat and the smell. But you know what? After a while, it's hot yoga, 37 degrees, but I embraced it. And I found it as a place where that mat was my breakdowns, my breakthroughs, my place of gratitude, my place of letting go, becoming centered, becoming present with who I was. And then I started to get into running. Now, I've always been a runner, but then I started doing marathons. I started to become this yes girl. And it was the only way to figure out what I wanted to do. And I'm still trying to figure that out. But I'm on a path now that I feel like is right. So I got into running. And then I jumped out of an airplane. And then I learned how to rock climb. And I learned how to ice climb. And I just started saying yes to life. And it was a whole newfound me. And what I realized after the 24 years I'd spent with my then husband was that I'd lost a sense of who I was, a sense of a connection to the outside world. Really, I was just so caught up in the routine of taking care of everybody else that I forgot about me. And so with this newfound freedom I felt, because it was a freeing feeling as much as it was difficult, but it was necessary. And I used to say, poor me. But now I say it was for me. So for me. And so getting into my body, I started to have to find a way to schedule me in. Because what I found is we can schedule everybody else. My kids have to be at the bus stop at 8 o'clock. They got there at 8 o'clock. My dinner had to be on the table at 5 o'clock. It was on the dinner at 5 o'clock. Dinner table at 5 o'clock. My clients were showing up at noon. I was there at noon for them. Where did I schedule me in? I didn't. Never scheduled me in. I would find time here and there, but I had to commit to me. And it was the only way that I found that it actually worked, is by making a conscious, not subconscious, but conscious decision to schedule me in like that $1 million client we always wanted in our business. Because at the end of the day, we have to show up for us so we can fully show up for others. And I started to see that as I got into my body and I started to do also meditating and writing and speaking, is that I started to show up in such a different way for other people and how I could impact other people. And it's why I'm standing on this stage today, is because I want to share that message that so much of us, and it doesn't matter where you are in your life, you shouldn't have to wait for the wake-up call to start making yourself a priority. We should be doing it long before the wake-up call. And I'm giving you permission today to start doing that. When in your life have you said no to yourself when you really wanted to say yes? And I challenge you today, take out a piece of paper if you have one and a pen, and to write down something as of late that you said no to when you really wanted to say yes. And I dare you to take a chance on yourself and do it. You know, because what I found is, even though some of the stuff I've tried and done, I was fearful of doing, but on the other side of fear lies freedom. And I found that freedom in my life. And by doing those things for myself and showing up for others, it just impacted everybody around me. My connections are better. Circumstances started showing up in my life. People started showing up in my life. And I could be there for them in such a way and show up, and I became a better listener. And as my body got into this routine of, I got up at 5 in the morning. Most people would say, I am not a morning person. I cannot do it. Neither was I. But you know what? We're creatures of habit. And so what it means is getting up and making that habit and starting that habit and creating that habit and getting into that routine of getting up and showing up for yourself. And by doing that, all of a sudden it's like, wow, I'm starting to look better. I'm starting to feel better. I'm eating better because I want to stay healthy. I'm sleeping better. I'm showing up for my business better. I'm just a happier person all around. Everything started to flow, and the one common denominator was me. Out of all of it, it was always about me. And I've said that before, and I say, you know what? We are number one. We absolutely are number one. And so much in life, we never make ourselves number one. Because if you're not showing up for yourself, you're not showing up for others. And people would say, that's egotistical, saying that you're number one. Actually, it's not. And it's not selfish of ourselves to make ourselves number one. Because we impact other people when we show up fully for ourselves. Our connections are better. And so I got into this routine, and I just got easier to do it. And maybe the routine won't be at 5 o'clock in the morning for you. Maybe it'll be at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Maybe you're in a transition in your life. Maybe you're not going through a divorce. Lucky you, because 48% of us will go through it. And I think the average marriage lasts 13.8 years for those of you that have a lot longer. That's great. Congratulations. But maybe you're not going through a divorce, and maybe you're going through a transition in your life where your kids are growing up and going out of the house, and you're trying to find yourself. But really, it's about just making yourself that priority and scheduling yourself in, because you deserve it. You absolutely deserve it. And so as I got through this and I started to do things like that and show up for myself in life, everything else started to flow better. Everything just flowed. And it really, it was about me. And so really, I want you to take a look at where you're at in your life. And it doesn't matter if you're married or you're single or whatever it is. I dare you to start showing up for yourself and saying yes to yourself more and making yourself a priority. Because my message is when you get out of your head and into your body, shift happens. And I truly believe that. Thank you.